So in a recent Nintendo Direct, my favorite game of all time, Nier Automata, was just announced to get a Switch port. And you know what that means. Depression on the go. Oh, and it also comes with a cool game. Ah yes, so Nier Automata, one of the best games of 2017. Did I play it? No. Back then I heard about that game, but I didn't really know that much about it other than the general concept. Plus, back in 2017, I was busy playing Breath of the Wild and failing school, but who needs things like education knowing your plans for the future when it got video games? Not me. But I do remember going to Anime Expo and seeing so many 2B cosplays, like you couldn't walk 3 meters without seeing one. It was like Wii Play in 2008, you couldn't escape it. It definitely made me a bit more curious about the game, but I didn't really play it until a year later. I was at a GameStop, I saw they had it, picked it up, looked at the cover and went, okay. And I bought it. I went home and I was excited to play it despite barely knowing anything about it. Oh man, can't wait to play this new game. It's probably gonna be a lot of fun. I mean, after all, it's by the same developers as Bayonetta, a fun, lighthearted action game. So I'm pretty sure this game will be just like that. So yeah, little did I know, this game would end up being a downer of an experience. But also, was gonna end up being my favorite game of all time. And after I played Automata, I ended up getting super sucked into the series. The lore, watching analyst videos on YouTube, and of course, learning all about the creator, Yoko Taro, who might be insane. So I want to just go over the series and why I love it. A little love letter from a video that will get no views. So, the very first game in the series, believe it or not, is not Nier, but Drakengard on the PlayStation 2. Drakengard 1 is the one game I don't own in the series. I don't own it for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't own a working PS2. And second, from my understanding, this is one of the rarer PS2 games, but now it does have some pretty inconsistent pricing going from reasonable to Jesus Christ. That being said, I did play through legal methods. So Drakengard 1 was definitely a unique experience. It truly is a very different kind of game. The story is super dark and covers many taboos, all the characters have questionable morals, etc. And the gameplay is also very different than other games, in that it's bad. So yeah, Drakengard is a victim of that sweet PlayStation 2 jank. It just does not feel great to play at all. And all you really do is just mash square and just do the same auto combo over and over. There is also many sections where you fly on your dragon and cover your ears, Drakengard 1 fans. I don't like this either. I just really don't like how it never feels like I'm fully in control and it just hurts my feelings. I am pretty sure I am not the only one that thinks the gameplay is bad, but the main part that everyone talks about is the story. Is it good? Well, maybe if you're high. So yeah, this story is actually kinda insane. Like, I'm seriously wondering if Yoko was on drugs when he made this. But the absolute insanity of all of it is what makes this game so unique. The main character is Kaim, and his personality is basically white bread but with murderous intent. So this is one of the few games that I know that actually criticizes you for killing all of these enemies. Kaim is basically just bloodthirsty, and there's even a part where you have to kill children, which is my favorite pastime. In this game, the goal is to save Furiai, your sister. It's like Wind Waker, except this time, your sister may or may not want to bang you. That's not a joke. In this world, people can create a pact with creatures and basically be one for them. Kaim decided to make a pact with the dragon Angelus, who Kaim apparently wants to bang. I'm seeing a pattern here. Throughout the game, you do meet more characters who will be in your party. And here are your allies. Annoying, Baby Eater, and Pedophile. I'm not making this up. Drakengard is the start of the Nier's tradition of multiple playthroughs and endings, where basically each playthrough is completely different, and all the endings are pretty crazy. But the one that you will hear a lot of is the last one, which is originally a joke ending made to rip off Evangelion. It ended up being the canon ending and the ending that would lead to the Nier series. Great. So, basically, you gotta kill this giant pregnant goddess thing by flying into the womb, which somehow then transport you to a modern day Tokyo, where you have to do a rhythm game that is way harder than it should be. And after you beat her, you die by some missile. The goddess starts crumbling down, which then apparently would lead to the chain of events that would lead to Nier. So, I don't really feel the need to go super in-depth in the lore and stuff. This is not that kind of video, but if I did, I'm pretty sure I'd go insane. But whatever, right after Drakengard, Yoko Taro would then make a spin-off of that series around that last ending called Nier. Drakengard 2 does not exist, don't ask about it. So Nier came out as 2 games because they wanted to do a Pokemon. So the 2 versions is Nier Replicant, where the main protagonist is a young boy to an early adult trying to save his sister. And then there's Nier Gestalt, where his protagonist is an old man trying to protect his daughter. But in America, we never got Replicant because apparently we hate pretty boys over here. I mean, everything needs to be macho. I mean, have you seen American Kirby? We made him pissed. So the original Nier, just like Drakengard, is jank as hell. The game is super sluggish to play, and the visuals is pretty if you're the type to consider dirt pretty. But despite all of that, it still became a cult classic due to the story alone. The original game really wasn't a big success commercially or critically, but a couple years after the success of Automata, Square Enix finally decided to do a remake of Replicant. Now I was super excited to see this announced because now I don't have to play jank, but also because this would be the first time the West gets to experience the original Replicant version of the game. Oh boy, I can't wait to play this. Ah! So for the remake titled Nier Replicant, what the hell? It was developed by Toy Logic instead of Cavia, who was the developers of the original and the Drakengard games. The new developers is probably due to the fact that Cavia is dead. The gameplay is, get this, actually fun now. It's definitely not as good as Automata, as there's still pretty simple combos, but this time it doesn't feel like I'm playing a game while having a brain aneurysm. So, Drakengard stories are normally just insane, but Nier stories are like actually good, but also insane. I love so many of these characters. Every character is going through a struggle of their own. Nier, Kaine, Weiss, and even minor characters like the King of Frascade or Devil and Popola are all contenders for some of my favorite video game characters. And also, I can't forget the best character, Emil. And nothing bad ever happens to Emil. The opening of Nier is one of my favorite in any game. A lot of it has to do with the eerie song made by God himself, Keiji Okabe. But also, the reveal is that despite looking like a snowy place, it's actually summer. Also, that ain't snow. So Nier has one of my favorite twists in video games, which is that the enemies or shades that you've been fighting the whole time are actually human. And all the characters you've been playing with are actually fakes or replicants, and the shades just want to go back to their former body. And during the second playthrough, you actually start having cutscenes that shows the shades' perspectives, and it actually tries to make you sympathize with them. And the main villain, Shadow Lord, is actually the protagonist and is the real version of you at the beginning of the game, who just is trying to save his version of Yona by putting her shade in the replicant Yona's body. You got that? Because it will be on the test later. Also, brand new to the remake, there is added content called Episode Mermaid, where you visit a abandoned ship and fight a new boss, a shade by the name of Luis. What makes this special though is each playthrough you learn more and more about this shade, and how all she ever wanted was to be more human, and considering shades are actually the real humans, yeah, you can see Yoko Taro really likes his dramatic irony. To get the different endings, the game forces you to play it at least 3 or 4 times, which does get a bit repetitive, unlike Automata. The first ending is actually the happiest ending because Yoko likes to give us a false sense of hope. The third and fourth ending is the interesting ones. Kaine is being taken over by a shade. You have the choice of either mercy killing her or erase your existence in order to save her. And to get the second option, you have to get every weapon in the game, which in my opinion is annoying. And if you do choose to save her, which is most likely the canon ending, the game actually erases all of your save files. I actually kind of love this, as you have to actually sacrifice something yourself if you care enough about Kaine. However, unlike in the original, the remake has a way to get your save file back. After you do ending D, start a new game, and you can now play ending E. For the first time, you actually get to play as Kaine, new moveset and all. The story is about Kaine trying to remember Nier. This is actually a retelling of a short story in a novella, but with some changes. It explores the changes of the fantasy of Replicant to the sci-fi game that is Automata. You go in this tree thing, and they met these two androids who so happens to have the same voice as 2B and 9S. So you do some fighting with copies of Kaine. Best boy Emil is back now, but with 2 extra hands. They don't really explain why, they just go with it. The tree leads them into some data sci-fi stuff. Kaine does her usual beating things and beating cores, and which makes her remember. A boss fight later, Kaine remembers Nier and he is reborn in a giant flower. So when I played this, I was mostly like, oh wow, I love this. But do I really understand it? No. Anyways, Nier Replicant, while still not as popular as Automata, is basically a masterpiece of a game, and I'm glad more and more people are playing it now. Despite the commercial failure of the Draken Nier series, Yoko Taro was not done just yet, as he came out with Drakengard 3 in 2013. Drakengard 3 is one of my favorite games that I hate. Carnage has never looked so beautiful. Oh, how right you are. So Drakengard 3 is actually very close to being good when it comes to gameplay. I actually do think the combat is very fun, but there's one problem. The game runs as well as a fish. It can't. This game has much more of a lighter tone and relies more on comedy, a lot of which is just sex jokes and whatever the hell this is. So the story is just fine to me. I don't really care for the other characters besides Zero and Mikhail. The other party member gimmicks is basically the fact that they are all horny, and not much else, to be honest. I do love the designs of the intoners, however, mostly because colors are the fun thing for fun games. The game actually had a story DLC where you get the perspectives of each intoner, and it makes the story better, so it's cool. It just kinda sucks that you need to pay for this. The intoners all use the power of song to power themselves up, which I think is a cool idea. This game can be pretty frustrating in the weirdest ways. Like this boss fight, the weak point was specifically one leg for some reason. And I'm not a big fan of the dragon combat. It never felt super responsive to me, and I kinda hate how Mikhail slowly goes down over time and I have to keep pressing X to keep him in the air. Just why? And one of the best parts of the game, in my opinion, is the final ending, which is like the first game, which is a rhythm game, except instead of trying to be creepy, it's more pretty. Now, I absolutely love this part, but that doesn't mean I don't hate it. So on one hand, I think it's a great ending and really memorable, but on the other hand, it's frustrating because so a lot of people say this part is BS, and I hate the fact that I kinda agree. The camera is constantly moving, and a lot of times you can't even see the notes, and the timing is very precise. Heck, the end even fades to black, but there's still notes you have to press at the right time. It's like playing a rhythm game and someone covers your screen but tells you that you still needs to play. This level actually took me a whole day to complete, and honestly, I have war flashbacks from it. This part is better to watch than it is to play due to how frustrating it is. So, Drakengard 3. Do I love it or do I hate it? Yes. So far, the whole series, while having a very dedicated fan base, was still very obscure, but that was all about to change in 2017 when Nier Automata, which in my opinion is by far the best Nier game. Now, a lot may argue that they think the story replicant is better or whatever, but if you ask me, I think both is equally good. It's like comparing God to Zeus and arguing who's more godly. Like, both is pretty godly, it's just that one was clearly more horny than the other. This game was developed by Platinum Games, the same team behind Bayonetta, and also the best game. They also created Irrelevancy. Platinum was a great choice for this game because, get this, the gameplay is actually good. The gameplay just feels right now. Combos feel good, and dodging attacks is satisfying. Also, the game actually looks pretty now. Who would have thought? Anyways, the game starts off in an aerial battle where your teammates die left and right, leaving you as the only survivor. You then fly into a factory and crash through a wall, and here you are met with the most famous character in the series. This here is 2B. She is by far the most recognizable character in the series. If there's any character from Nier that people know, even people who barely know about the game, it's probably 2B. Of course, that's probably because of 2B gets the most amount of fan art, especially of those of the my mom won't approve of variety. Now, 2B the character is not even that lewd, to be honest, because there's just one problem. This thing is in the way. But don't worry, Yokotaro made a secret where if you self-destruct then heal yourself, then you can have 2B without a skirt, and congratulations, you are officially part of the Virginity Clan. No! Automata definitely uses the concept of different playthroughs the best. The first playthrough you play as 2B on a mission to stop aliens and robots from destroying Earth and like a bunch of other things. 2B is great to control, and I love that they made it so that you can have two different weapons at once. It makes the combat more engaging as it leads to way more combo potential than any other game in this series, given the fact that you can mix and match various different types of weapons. The flying sections are actually pretty fun too. Some of them can drag out a bit, but I much prefer these over the dragon flying in the Drakengard games. One of the moments I'll always remember is the boss fight with Simone. The opening cutscene with her is probably one of the most memorable boss intros of all time. I just love how her singing transitions into the boss fight song, which is like a godlike OST. And the idea of an operator singer robot is both fun and cool. This is the point I think many people fell in love with the game, and it makes sense why. It just grabs your attention. The second playthrough is the same story as the first, but this time you play as 9S and you get his perspective. And with him, you find out more about Yorha and how 9S is suspecting that Yorha is hiding secrets from them. You also get some text cutscenes from the story and perspectives of the machines themselves, including Simon. I don't think playing as 9S is as fun as 2B, mainly due to the fact that 9S only has one weapon, but in place of the weapon is the ability to hack into enemies or damage or just insta-kill them. Cool. The first and second playthrough mainly serves as a way to introduce the characters in the world and the story, and ending is overall much more uplifting. And then comes the third playthrough, which is a completely different story, and from here on, the game went from good to amazing. This is when everything starts breaking down. The characters are all at their worst, characters die, and the game's story relies on the feeling of hopelessness. By the end, 9S goes completely unhinged after learning that pretty much everything he's known has been a lie, and when learning the truth that 2B has actually been killing him over and over whenever he started to question things. The characters become super interesting, and I love 9S's arc in this playthrough. You actually switch between 9S and, for the first time, A2, a Yorha unit who went rogue. A2 plays basically the same as 2B, and now she has a unique mechanic called Berserker Mode, where she becomes faster at the cost of draining most of her health. This is a neat mechanic I'll never use. Now A2 I don't like as much as 2B or 9S. I don't find her as interesting, but she is also not in the game that much, so I think not enough time was given into her. I don't hate her, I just don't like her as much as the other characters. For the ending, 9S and A2 are enemies, and the game actually makes you choose whose side you're on, and the ending is different, depending on who you choose. Now when I first played the game, I chose 9S, whose ending is... So the ending messed me up for a good 30 minutes, but the other option when you choose A2 is that A2 uses her pod to hack into 9S to save him by removing his logic virus and restarting his system. The pod then takes 9S away, and A2 then dies as the place falls apart. So as you can see, either endings lead to someone dying. There is really no true happy ending, but Yoko Taro has something up his sleeve. If you do both endings, you are greeted with a unique ending credits. The pods are about to delete the data of the Euroha units, but one of them says he doesn't want to. The player then is given a choice to if you want to save the characters. If you press yes, then the credits become a shoot 'em up where you shoot the credits. And the more times you die from it, the game shows you a quote written by actual players. And if you die enough, then you suddenly get helped by a swarm of other shooters that are supposed to be other players. When you beat it, you are offered the choice to delete your own data, so that you can help another player. I personally love this ending. This is one of the most creative ideas for end credits in the game I've seen, and the music is just amazing. And I love how the game that ended up being about nihilism and destruction of the world has such a hopeful ending. I honestly think that Automata is an example of why video games are art. Nier Automata became extremely popular and introduced many people to the series, myself included. Nowadays there's plenty of concerts, crossovers, merch, and several books that include even more lore. There's been stage plays, and recently there's been an announcement for an anime adaptation. I have some Nier merch myself, like this Nier Nendroid and this nice 2B figure that totally ended up being a stupid bootleg, and now I am ashamed when people visit me. There's also a lot of other figures that's I can't afford. But there's other random merch like these cool music boxes, plushies, shirts, CDs, a meal bank. And of course, Nier was famous enough to get a third game in the form of Nier Reincarnation, a mobile game which comes with a bunch of short stories in the Nier universe and some really egregious grinding and gacha mechanics. Like, I see what you're doing, Square, and no, I'm not spending money on this gacha stuff. Every day I see Nier getting more and more popular, and I love to see it. Just seeing all the cosplay and fan art still being made makes me happy, and the fandom is probably one of the most dedicated ones I've experienced. I mean, recently there was the whole church mystery that made the fandom go up in flames, and did it end up being real? Nier is truly one of the greatest series I've discovered, and to this day I consider Automata to me one of the best video games of all time. And Drakengard kinda just exists.